Season 5, Episode 2, Duck and Cover, the projectiles impacting our teachers. Our listeners, please be advised, a description of an amputation is presented in this episode. I have injury statistics on teachers, invites Sara. Tell me, how is it that they are struck by flying objects, hit by projectiles? That question leads to confessions by the boys as they recall their school days. Sara remembers her Italian language teacher who used to throw chalk at students. It's the reverse now, exclaims Trajce. Sara challenges the team to consider the enduring impact of design, starting with the environment to have a lasting effect on those using the space. Positively so if designed well. Trajce connects the teaching woes to past discussions on the stressors faced by teachers, explored in Season 2, Episode 13, an upstanding citizen with salmon in his pocket. The team can't help but travel south in their conversation, recalling the story of a teacher caught on film after hours in the most inconvenient way.
Educate your mind, cause the system will keep you blind. Educate your mind, cause the system will keep you blind. Educate your mind, cause the system will keep you blind. Create a new path, don't let the people follow your signs.
Hello and welcome to the Why Work podcast series. You are listening to Trajce Vitkovsky, Sara Pizzell and Alan Girl. Okay, we ready? Sara, teach me something.
That's a bit of a clue there, Trajce. You know, when you think about being hit by moving objects, right? That's a mechanism of injury that you talk about in injury and claims management. You know, what do you think of? I think of maybe somebody out on a construction site.
Forklift.
You got to have forklift. You've got to have a hard hat. Working around dozers, maybe cranes where something could drop from the sky.
Falling objects, falling items of plant.
Things falling all over the place.
You know, just before you go on, I remember the sign. It was a sign of a large company. It's one of the very first cases I did. And the aluminium sign was 3 letters, one part, 3 letters, the other part, but it was 2. And the first part of the sign, it was an aluminium sign, it fell off the rivets, and as it was going down the 30-odd stories, you know, have you seen a feather?
Yeah.
As the feather goes like this, it's going down,
zigzag.
going down. But this is an aluminium
everybody
sign.
listening, what Trajce is doing is showing his hand wave
just
side
like a feather,
by side, gently zigzagging down, the feather floating.
Yeah, remember Forrest Gump, like the feather going down, down, and as it went. So of course you imagine the gravitational pull. It severed, so amputation below the knee of a worker just walking past.
Ah, gosh.
So that's a falling object. So since then, though, you'll see now signs are either made of material or polystyrene or that plastic.
So this was a sign that feathered its way, drifted down and looked lovely and actually caused this type of injury.
Clean cut.
What year was that?
In 2000, when did I start? 2006. So it was in Brisbane. There's a lot of construction, but one of the positive outcomes, not unfortunately for the amputee, is since then the better design was not to use aluminium, because who would have thought the sign will pop out and clean, sever a leg.
That's right.
But now
low probability event.
Yeah, but now it's polystyrene, so it took a victim for it to improve. But when you said falling objects, you know, your imagination can run loose. So I had not thought of that for nearly 17, 18 years. But so you mean that?
So no,
objects.
in New South Wales, 11 teachers are hit by moving objects every week. Teachers, not construction workers.
What moving objects?
What moving objects?
It's interesting. So the injury bill has tripled. It says here that a rising number of teachers have psychological damage relating to work pressure, bullying, exposure to violence, and the injury bill has tripled in 6 years. Now, we've talked about salmon in your pocket, right? Where you had an esteemed physics lecturer or teacher that suddenly found themselves in an unusual situation of possibly related to high stress, you know?
It was
And we had a teacher chased with a baseball bat.
Yes.
That's a moving object.
So is this what you mean by the moving object?
Yeah, so it says that they aside from all of this bullying, this tripled exposures to psychosocial related harms in occupational setting, 14 teachers every week lodged claims after they suffered a mental disorder, and there were 11 injuries at work being hit by moving objects. So I do the same question. Are you thinking about something that's in a workshop, like, you're teaching woodworking in that type of setting, or are you talking about a baseball bat chasing you?
Is this kids
held by a child?
So the moving objects are kids throwing things at teachers.
Let's have a look. Bill for dealing with mental illness was $65 million, and the cost for traumatic joint and muscle tendon injuries more than doubled to $37 million. They've talked about all the rehab, and they've just got this general classification of, moving objects here. And they need a special response.
Wow, moving objects.
In teaching.
Well, that must be...
Chalk?
No,
I had an Italian
nature of injuries.
Yeah, but I had an Italian teacher. But if somebody was suddenly talking, just
throw the duster.
say this gently. He was a little bit cross-eyed, so you never knew. He'd be looking at Trajce and then throw the chalk over at Alan.
So throwing.
He's throwing the object, right?
It's turned around now. The power imbalance. I remember teachers throwing dusters.
Yes,
and of course we're old enough for our younger listeners may not be aware of this, but. I know a lot of people who would get the cuts. Remember the cuts?
I do.
What are the cuts, Alan? Sarah may not know.
We had a piece of bamboo that was whacked over your hand.
Yeah.
Oh.
The cane.
We got the cuts. So we were for
That's
form
called
of
the cut.
Corporal punishment. And we got Robbo, a good friend of mine. He used to always get the cuts. And he was just disruptive. And perhaps this age he may have been diagnosed with some type of attention deficit, but not then. Back then he was seen to be disruptive. Picked up by the collar, and then taken away outside, sent up to the principal. And the principal would give him the cuts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well,
5?
Yeah,
wow.
That's heavy.
5 cuts, 5 whacks with the bamboo cane. Now, I know of stories of scars on, knuckles from other schools, certain religions, which I won't mention, where, people would the very strict teachers would whack them with, same thing, was the cuts. What do they call that in America?
The cane.
Cane, sorry.
The cane.
Yeah, no, it was the cane. Well, bamboo cane.
Give you the cane.
Yeah, but they say give you the cane, but we in Australia, everything has to be
a new,
called the cuts, because they're cut. You get the cuts. So, yeah, it was a cane. Do you want the cane? I remember that. You're going to get the cane, or we'll give you the cuts. So, it's interesting that
How many times did you get it?
I never got the cuts, but
Never?
But I remember one time I put one of my Pez packets, and I remember it's funny how this does traumatize you.
Little
lollies, Pez,
candies.
Yeah, because you could bring all sorts of lollies to school. Yeah, the Pez was the big thing, the little candy thing. Again, for our listeners who don't know what Pez are, you stick them in a little plastic dispenser. You tilt the head backwards of
it was
Mickey
like
Mouse
a plastic
or Daffy Duck.
That's right. It was a character.
And out came like this pill-shaped.
You're doing it then, popping pills even then.
in grade 6.
Pez pop
what
pills.
happened was I was in grade 6, and I remember the teacher. He may not be around. I'll give him his name. His name was Mr. Mapstone. An interesting name. Anyway, and I put this is interesting, we're talking about teachers, and we talked about the trauma of teachers, but I'm going to tell you about some of the trauma teachers inflicted on us. So it was interesting because...
Aww.
I wouldn't have thought of this. You've just unlocked something. So rather than... And those were the days where we had...
regression.
Yes, regression therapy.
Aluminium dustbins, like Grouch. Bins. So you'd have... No, who was it? Who was the...
The Grouch, you pop up the dustbin. There he is.
One of those dustbins. So
trash can for my American friends.
Look, trash can. To be fair, Oscar the trash can from Sesame Street.
Oscar the Grouch.
So you pick up the thing. So yes, and I was being lazy. So you open up the lid. You chuck your rubbish in. Chuck for the Americans means throw. You throw your rubbish in, and you put the lid back on. I didn't do that. I opened up my Pez packet, took out the paper, took out the alfoil, and I just put the rubbish on top of the lid bin.
Is that all?
Grade 6.
Bad boy.
And out of nowhere, like a bat out of hell, he came. He's a lovely mo, though. I didn't appreciate it till now. And he's grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, and he's given me a whack on my palm. So not the cuts, just a little slap on the wrist. And he said, "That's not what you do." And he was yelling like viscerally, and I just thought, I was mortified. So I thought, in hindsight, that's pretty heavy-handed.
Yes.
So anyway, now it's flipped. Students seem to be doing that
to
Well,
teachers?
of sort. They complain, so that's still a student behavior issue, and here the complaint is still about student behavior causing this harm to teachers. But let's just talk a little bit about, behavioral management and design intervention, okay? So at my son's school, it looks trendy and modern and very clean, and it looks like, new buildings going up, etc. You think, oh, great, beautiful. When you spend a little more time, and again, that's that task-based analysis to look at it from different points of view, and you're in there even for a student-parent conference, the rooms are modern, and there's some rooms are separated by glass, right? Mm-hmm. But they haven't got the acoustics protection completely, so you can still hear some of what's happening in the other room. Some of this glass as a divider hasn't got an extra blocking. You can see through. So here I am, a child expected to learn and to undertake some deep learning, understanding new concepts. I've got to sit in non-uniform classroom seating now. Sometimes it's stadium seating, sometimes it's little jelly bean shapes and a few rocker balls. So that's very trendy right now for the students who have sensory preferences for more movement. They may have that as options to rock and shimmy. And there's different seating configurations. Sometimes they're almost like lab chairs and stools. So you've got this variety in color, in figures, in textures and shape and motion. And then at the same time, you might have the potential distraction of more ambient noise, more neighboring noise, more visual movement happening around you. And if you don't learn well when there are a lot of other activities and sensory stimuli around you, your behavior is going to act out. You're going to be distracted, you'll be easily irritated, you'll be grumpier. And so if the design intervention is not promoting enough accommodation for neurodiverse needs, for the way different people respond to their sensory world, you're going to have behavior management issues, and suddenly the teachers have these complaints. And so I'm always saying, let's go down this tier of design strategy. Don't start down low with a behavioral based strategy when you could start up high.
Well, when you look at the dollar cost of those claims, there's a lot of money to be saved.
Give us an example. What kind of dollar cost? What are we talking?
Oh, you read them out before.
Oh, that total amount. The total aggregate amount. I was thinking you meant per claim.
Sarah, are you saying the design? It's this beautiful, the aesthetic. It's this wonderful
aesthetic.
look.
It appears at first.
Yes.
At first, but functionality also has to match. And there are. I've mentioned the Will Building Institute because I've been an advisor with them for years on some of their committees and project committees, but they have well for schools too, trying to look at the health of the occupants, and health would also relate to performance, being able to reconcile the sensory world in these kinds of environments. We have almost a tiered strategy for design. You have to think about some of the aspects of governance and policy and whether or not that's going to support the design outcomes you want. But then you also have things like the built environment, and you think about the change that's made. So some people think that seems so far removed and that's expensive, right? But what happens if you change the built environment? The impact is what? 20 or 30 years? So if you get that right, you have potential for 20 or 30 years of more robust conditions in that space. If you get it wrong, you might inherit 20 or 30 years of really difficult, challenging times that you have to live in that space. That place is no longer as serene as it should be for you, no longer conducive to learning. You have to inherit it and have many workarounds. And
That's
you see
an interesting way of thinking about it.
And then equipment, mobile plant equipment, same thing. What are you inheriting or what are you gaining? And you go through down and stratify your design interventions all the way down to that tail end of behavioral intervention, which is the hardest thing to have anything resilient or last more than, a training session should be done incredibly well in high fidelity, but even still you might just affect that shift or that week or that month. Get the built environment and the governments and the regulations of the equipment and that technology, systems for detection, right? And you've got 20, 30 years of good impact.
So staying with the school example, so are you saying that maybe during that planning and the architectural stage that they should be having a conversation about designing
100%, and with work design strategists. But then that work relates to what I call design and use, or the realities of work, and that's missing everywhere, right? There is not a design strategist there to detect what's the realities of work. So even in parent-teacher conference, I ask the teachers about this space. I say, you do know, I have volunteered in the past to give some advice, and I'm not taking up on this advice. This is what I do. and they go, yeah, we can't concentrate. We've had to move, little Jimmy over here, and we've had to move Jane over here, and this is what we do to make the best of it. So they're accommodating these kinds of circumstances.
So it's a bit like consultation. There was none.
No, it was too cursory. It was just tokenistic, right? Tokenistic design can cause a lot of failures of taking some quick shortcuts, and that's happening at the economics in the world that we're continually asked. So the Green Building Council of Australia has an ergonomics credit for interiors, right? And some companies will aspire to achieve this credit, and to qualify, you must have a certified professional ergonomist sign off and agree that somebody has met the conditions of this credit, right?
I remember you were saying that's right with the if you go like that example you gave. Remember you did the consulting work for where they had that really talented IT person, and it was the distraction.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
yes,
so
that sensory profile. Was for an individual, but the same
was a fix.
Yeah, the same considerations could be made for populations of workers to have that neurodiverse needs well met. That you're accommodating that, right?
Yeah, it's just going to be cheaper than the prosecution and the workers' compensation claims.
And just the duress of what's not reported, but actually still affects your work and your love or joy or motivation and your aspirations. So that right now, because of difficult economic situations, a lot of companies start to inquire about some of these credits, and then they go, we're not going to go for it. We're not going to bother to go through the rigor. You could positively think beyond the immediate now. You could affect the next 20 or 30 years of good design. And with the design strategist, you also build in what are those systems of detection? Do you have the right alerts going to the right people at the right time? And not just one layer, and plan B and plan C. And that's why I talk about this webbing. It's not linear. And is that right information going to the right person enough time to respond adequately and to continue to make changes? And are we learning from that design to continually give feedback? So what I see is like a building going up and people having this experience, and then 2 or 3 other buildings going up still making the same mistakes. I'm like, stop. Why do we not have a system of learning from this? And same with construction and transportation and mining. The same equipment keeps coming into the system. And it's like, what's the disconnect here? There's no design and use. You need a work design strategist in that system to really facilitate that. And as I've learned from the mining industry and work like Earth Moving Equipment Safety Roundtable, industry must collaborate. So this element of competitiveness needs a little bit of dissipation when you think, hang on, we could actually create amazing innovations if we could agree and have a shared voice to go back to the manufacturers. Because one company, as big as they are, might not be big enough to influence manufacturing, distribution, supply.
So do you think, so there's not a lot of that inter-cooperation?
Very rare. I'm seeing it in mining, and it is so rare. I don't see it in aviation. I don't see it in transportation and construction and manufacturing. Universities, how much real collaboration happens to share, to influence better learning module development and influence governance and things? I think in a really constructive way, not face value way.
Not just say a couple of researchers just doing a joint project.
A couple of committees randomly,
But I think it's the nature of competition, you'll find, Sarah.
That's what I'm saying,
It's a competitive world, and people want to jealously guard their know-how, or as if somehow they can be seen as the pioneers of so that competitive negative streak.
And we're seeing that in aviation right now in Australia. That's coming up significantly as a real concern. And yet, certainly there could be collaboration to work out, whether it's flight passages or just the design of airplanes and for the flight crew, right?
That's right. To just make it more...
and passenger experiences.
Make it a better experience for everyone, because one day you may use airline X, the other day you use airline Y.
Oh, and the staff will move around from airline to airline, right?
Yeah. That to me, and it's not even like a sort of a utopia or some type of Pollyanna misguided or altruistic view. It's actually a good design, a better way to live and
that's
work.
Right.
Better work by design.
United Nations, the social aspirations around our design, and what are we doing for sustainability and resilience in our design strategy. So that just started from a discussion about teachers with all these injury claims, right? Yeah. Go back to looking at this more systematically and saying, hang on, what else is contributing? Because
kids are kids. Doesn't matter what school they go to.
That's it. Salmon in a pocket should not be happening.
No.
We don't want that level of burnout, right?
Yeah, and I imagine
among
that
our teaching staff.
There are so many other cases. That was just the one that I happened to perchance, but there are so many that would be going on with teachers. Well, you gave that story of that woman with the footage. So there are so many ways in which stressful things. Let's
just call it like it was. That was a teacher on off hours on film, right, in a public space. Did I shock you with that? Let's just call it like it is, all right? I didn't say where, who, what. Caught on film, right? And likely using some equipment, some apparatus that was in a retail store, right?
Yes.
In a retail store, caught on film. Right. I was cautious about saying it, but I think you have to say it. We've hinted around with this case.
I think there's a song about that, isn't there?
I think so, yes. But the thing is, look, that's right. We'll stop because that's...
Educate your mind, cause the system will keep you blind. Educate your mind, cause the system will keep you blind. Educate your mind, cause the system will keep you blind. Create a new path, don't let the people follow your signs.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Why Work. You've been listening to Trajce, Sara and Alan. And if you'd like to know more about some of the things we've talked about today, please subscribe, and we'd be more than happy to provide you with information, names of cases, and other things that may interest you. Please be aware that none of the matters we've talked about today should be construed as legal advice or any other type of advice. We're just here to talk about all things related to work. See you next time.